Lillian, financial stability. It came so out. Out clear. How can one achieve financial stability with the budget?
Okay. I think it goes back to the point that is mentioned about planning. When you know where you want to go, I like the quote by Stephen Covey. It says, begin with the end in mind. Okay. So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? So when you have your long-term plan, then it means you work according to that and then achieve financial stability. Because without a plan, even if you save and you had no plan, something comes up and then all that money goes somewhere else. I remember some years ago, I wanted to leave employment to go into financial consultancy. And from my research, I knew that going into consultancy, there was no guaranteed monthly paycheck. And from my research, I realized I need at least 6 months worth of my living expenses for me to be comfortable going to consult. I mean, financial literacy, we advise 3 months worth of your living expenses. But now going into consultancy, because you have some good months and some seasons that are not so good, I knew I needed about 6 months worth of my living expenses to ensure stability. And so I sat down and thought, okay, so what's my game plan for this? At that time, I was still not good at saving. And so it became deliberate to know, okay, fine, if I want to achieve 6 months worth of my living expense, to go into consultancy. So my plan was to go into consultancy. To be able to go into consultancy, my cue to be ready to go into consultancy was to have 6 months worth of my living expense. So the question is, how much is 6 months worth of my living expense? Which goes back to tracking. So you have to know your numbers. What are you tracking? How much you spend on food? How much you spend on rent? How much you spend on transport? On everything that goes about running your life. So you have to know how much you spend on a monthly basis so that when you multiply by 6, it gives you a target. And so when I did my exercise, I found what my target was, and I was like, okay, fine. If I want to go into consultancy in the next 5 years by that timeline, I said, okay, fine, I need to start saving at least. If I save at least 10% of my salary on a monthly basis, I'll be able to achieve this. But when I started out, of course, it was not easy. But what we did at my workplace then, we formed a group, they're called SACCO, and we encouraged everyone to save some money. And so we started saving some money. So the idea was to have discipline of saving some small money. It was actually 20,000, 50,000, like that. So we started saving some money, and it reached a point where I reached 5% of my gross salary, and I plateaued because I was like, this saving thing, I don't think I'm going to reach there. The 10% target. And I had a conversation with myself, and I figured, you know what, my employer is already taking 5%, putting in NSSF, so maybe if I do my 5%, it's still okay, it's contributing. But God was faithful that in that time I got a change in job, and so I got a job with an international NGO, and because I was paying so well, I realized even if I save 10% of my gross, I was still able to comfortably live within that amount of money. But also, what helped me was that when I got this better job, I did not go and change house and change car, because normally that's what happens. You get a bigger job, you get a bigger car, a bigger house, and bigger everything. But because I already had a plan, I was able to plug into that plan. I think if I didn't have the plan and a target, I would have just expanded everything as we all do. Anyway, so I started this saving 10%, but also depends on where you save it. And I was using unit trust, so they are not easy for me to get the money if I want to get it, but also the money was getting interest. So I did that for about a couple of years, and it so happened that one time I go into this office for this well-paying job, and my boss gives me a letter and say, your contract is coming to an end. Okay, my contract was still 5 years. I mean, it was a 5-year contract. So this was the 3rd year into the 5-year contract. And so I had 3 months notice for the job to end. And I was like, okay, if my job is coming to an end now, it means then this is the time to go into financial consultancy. I mean, into consultancy world. And I sat there thinking, am I ready to go into consultancy? And I went back to my plan and I said, okay, my queue for getting ready for consultancy was 6 months worth of my living expenses. So what I did, I was using UAP Financial Services then. They send you a statement on a monthly basis. So I went into, I remember it was April. It was April 2016, still remember very well. So I went and got my statement for that month, and I was pleasantly surprised that I'd saved more than 6 months out of my living expenses. But remember, it was not something that started then. It is something that started 5 years before. It started by saving, but before saving, it started by recording the expenses. And when I was recording the expenses, maybe because I'm an accountant, I would analyze every month how much I would spend on the different things. And after a couple of years, I was able to see, oh, do I really want to spend that much on food? Do I really want to spend that much on entertainment? And so I developed caps, so to speak. By cap for entertainment, my cap is like the upper limit for entertainment, for all those different things. And that gave me the discipline to keep on saving, the discipline to keep on investing. And so by the time my job came to an end, actually, I was ready to leave. And my boss at that time was an expatriate. And we got the letter the same day, and he was very ruffled. And he asked me, how come you're not ruffled? Both of us are losing our jobs, you know? And one thing is my faith in God. And I couldn't tell him it's because of my faith in God. I believe God gave me that job. So he can give me another job, another source of income. But I could not tell him that because he was an atheist. Whenever I have staff meetings, he say, me, I don't pray, I'm an atheist. So I couldn't tell him about my faith in God. But the second thing that kept me calm was because of this thing, that I'd saved 6 months worth of my living expense, so that if in the next 6 months I've not got any consultancy work going, I can still survive, I can still live, I can still go on. It's a long way to answer your question about financial stability, but I'm just saying financial stability is not reached overnight. It is a discipline that you develop over time. When I was going through that journey of that target, I was disciplined in having, what is that called, a paper to go to the supermarket to buy things. And over time, I will know, okay, these are the things I buy on a monthly basis, so I don't overindulge. This is my budget on a monthly basis, so I don't overindulge. And after doing that for 5 years, I don't even have to have a physical budget written. It's like it gets ingrained in your head. And so that becomes a disciplined life that you live with and gives you some sort of stability. It's a long way to answer that. But I'm just saying, there are many components that give you financial stability. But also apart from that is having other skills that give you revenue streams, more than one. Remember, I had a job that is coming to an end. But before this job came to an end, I had started, as we call it, side hustling. My consultancy skills, I started doing some consultancy work over the weekend. And so that was giving me some revenues. And also my hobby for gardening, I started selling plants from home over the weekend. And so that was giving me some other revenues. So as much as my job was coming to an end, one, I had the buffer for 6 months. But another thing, I knew that I already started building a pipeline for clients to consult. There were not so many, but at least they will not keep me idle. But the other important thing is that I turned my hobby into a business. And so my job and my last day of work was 31st of July, 2016. And 1st of August, 2016, I opened my first outlet for Maua and More. Yeah, because I was scared of staying at home. By God's grace, I've never stayed at home from campus. I got a job immediately. So I was like, this is not the time I'm going to start staying at home. So I said, okay, let me have this shop. If I don't have consultancy work, consultancy work is not every day you wake up and it's a job for you to do. I hadn't created a pipeline. So I knew I can still be there to work on my business as I wait for consultancy pipeline to happen. So the point I'm saying is for you to have financial stability, you have the discipline of budgeting, tracking your finances, investing, but also having more than one source of income. Because in case one stream dries up, you still have something else. There's a story someone saying is you look at your finances like a table with four legs. So if one leg breaks, the table will not fall. It will not be very steady, but at least you can still place a couple of things there. But if it had only one, it falls, it's gone. Eh? So I think having multiple revenue streams is one of the things that helps you to have a stable financial budget and also a financial life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lillian. And the conversation is getting constructive.